Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Gates channel. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and hit like for more daily drama updates and spoilers. Your support truly means a lot and helps our channel grow every day. Now, let's jump straight into today's exciting update. It was only a matter of time before the carefully constructed web of deception surrounding Hayley Hamilton began to unravel. For weeks, she had moved through every conversation with effortless confidence, changing her story whenever it suited her and believing no one would ever notice the subtle contradictions she left behind. Hayley had always possessed an uncanny ability to make herself appear vulnerable when it benefited her, while secretly convincing herself she was the sharpest mind in every room. That dangerous combination of arrogance and manipulation had allowed her to stay several steps ahead of almost everyone around her, yet every carefully built lie carries the seeds of its own destruction, and as Friday, July 31st approaches, the cracks in Hayley's perfect performance are finally becoming impossible to ignore. The one thing she never truly accounted for was the strength of a family that refuses to ignore the truth once suspicion begins to spread. The Dupree family has started sensing that something simply doesn't add up, and the growing unease is becoming impossible to dismiss. Instead of accepting Hayley's explanations at face value, the Dupree cousins begin doing something that could completely change the game. They compare notes. Each conversation reveals another tiny inconsistency, another version of events that doesn't quite match the last, and with every discovery, the puzzle pieces slowly begin falling into place. Individually, Hayley's lies may have seemed harmless enough, but together they paint a far more troubling picture. The realization settles over them with quiet intensity that they haven't been hearing one honest story from Hayley at all. They've been hearing a different version, crafted specifically for each person she speaks to. What once appeared to be innocent misunderstandings now feels like deliberate manipulation, and the family's growing concern becomes impossible to ignore. Ironically, the person who may end up destroying Hayley's carefully protected image isn't even someone she considers a true enemy. Her complicated friendship with Lynette Wise has become one of the weakest links in her carefully forged chain of deception. Frenemies often know each other better than anyone else, and Lynette has seen enough of Hayley's behavior to recognize when something feels off. As whispers begin circulating through the Dupree family, Smitty, Jacob, and others start connecting conversations that were never supposed to intersect. They realize that every time Hayley speaks, her version of reality subtly shifts depending on who happens to be listening. One person hears one explanation, another receives an entirely different story, and before long, the contradictions become far too obvious to dismiss as simple mistakes. The more everyone talks, the more Hayley's elaborate illusion begins collapsing under the weight of its own inconsistencies. That growing suspicion couldn't arrive at a more critical moment, because Hayley has become far more than just an unreliable partner. She has become someone increasingly dangerous. The nickname Black Widow is beginning to feel less like cruel gossip and more like an unsettling warning about the path she's walking. Her relationship with Bill is becoming increasingly complicated, and those closest to him are starting to fear that he may not fully understand the danger standing right beside him. The Duprees aren't simply questioning whether Hayley is a good match for Bill anymore. Their concerns have evolved into something much darker and much more urgent. Deep down, they hope that before it's too late, everyone around Bill will finally recognize that Hayley isn't merely wrong for him. She may represent a genuine threat to his future. That realization carries an emotional weight that hangs heavily over every conversation, making each new discovery feel increasingly urgent. While Hayley's world inches closer to collapse, another emotional storm begins brewing between two people whose history refuses to stay buried. Danny has never been someone willing to avoid confrontation, especially when powerful emotions are involved. Rather than backing away from conflict, she walks directly into it, prepared to say exactly what's on her mind, regardless of the consequences. Friday brings yet another explosive face-to-face encounter as she confronts Bill once again. Their complicated past has always been filled with unfinished conversations, lingering resentment, and emotions neither of them has ever managed to fully escape. Even after everything they've endured, every meeting between them feels like reopening old wounds that never completely healed. The tension surrounding their reunion promises to be every bit as emotionally charged as viewers have come to expect. The weekly preview hints that Bill's latest argument with Hayley centers, at least in part, around his daughters, adding another deeply personal layer to the conflict unfolding around them. Family has always been a powerful emotional trigger, and when children become part of the conversation, every disagreement suddenly carries much higher stakes. It's entirely possible that Danny's confrontation with Bill grows out of those very same concerns, forcing the former couple to revisit painful subjects neither of them can comfortably ignore. Every accusation, every emotional response, and every defensive remark threatens to reopen scars that time has failed to erase. Their complicated relationship continues to blur the line between love and resentment, making every interaction unpredictable. Whether they meet in anger or attempt to find common ground, their shared history refuses to stay in the past, constantly pulling them back into emotional territory neither of them can fully escape. And of course, there is one unforgettable moment that inevitably resurfaces whenever Danny and Bill find themselves standing face to face. Whether they're arguing bitterly or speaking with unexpected calm, the night they shared in the elevator continues to cast a long shadow over every conversation they have. It has become the memory neither of them can completely escape, surfacing again and again whenever emotions begin running high. That single encounter remains an emotional touchstone, reminding both of them and everyone watching that unresolved feelings rarely disappear simply because time passes. Instead, those buried emotions quietly wait beneath the surface until the next confrontation forces them back into the light. Every new exchange between Bill and Danny feels layered with everything they refuse to say aloud, making even the smallest conversation pulse with emotional tension. Elsewhere, Deanna had every reason to believe life was finally beginning to move in a more hopeful direction. After enduring difficult moments and emotional setbacks, she recently experienced something wonderfully ordinary, a genuine date with Noah, Kyle's son. The evening offered a refreshing sense of possibility, allowing her to imagine a future that wasn't constantly overshadowed by embarrassment or disappointment. Even more encouraging, she found herself welcomed into the Dupree family celebration at Uptown, surrounded by warmth, laughter, and the comforting feeling of belonging. For a brief moment, it seemed as though the difficult chapters of her life might finally be giving way to brighter days. The happiness she experienced felt earned, fragile, and deeply meaningful after everything she'd already endured. But happiness inside this world rarely remains untouched for long. Just when Deanna begins believing she's turning a corner, danger quietly slips back into her life. Randy's carefully maintained cover is suddenly on the verge of being exposed, creating a situation filled with tension and uncertainty. In the middle of that growing crisis, Joey makes a calculated move, deliberately baiting Deanna into losing control. His goal isn't simply to provoke her, it is to create the perfect distraction while attention shifts away from Randy and toward Deanna herself. Every word Joey chooses is carefully designed to push emotional buttons he already knows are painfully sensitive. As the pressure builds, Deanna finds herself standing dangerously close to another public emotional collapse. What makes the situation even more heartbreaking is how desperately Deanna has been trying to leave her past mistakes behind. She had only recently opened up to Noah about one of the most humiliating experiences of her life, the emotional breakdown she suffered during the free clinic ceremony honoring her father. That painful moment unfolded in front of countless witnesses, leaving her overwhelmed with shame long after the event had ended. She confessed how difficult it had been trying to rebuild her confidence after such a public loss of composure, hoping Noah would understand the struggles she'd been carrying ever since. Just as she begins allowing herself to believe she's moving beyond that painful chapter, Joey cruelly threatens to drag her right back into it. The possibility of another explosive outburst hangs heavily in the air, leaving everyone wondering whether Deanna can hold herself together or whether history is about to repeat itself in the worst possible way. Meanwhile, another mystery quietly continues taking shape beneath the surface. Vanessa's first meeting with Joey's sister, Heather, was anything but ordinary. The encounter was strangely tense, awkward from beginning to end, emotionally charged despite how brief it ultimately became, and filled with uncomfortable moments that left far more questions than answers. Although Vanessa and Joey invited Heather to join them for dinner, she politely declined before supposedly leaving for London. On the surface, the explanation seemed simple enough, yet something about the entire interaction refused to sit right with Vanessa. The memory continues lingering in her thoughts, refusing to fade no matter how much time passes. As the days move forward, Vanessa finds herself unable to stop replaying every detail of that unusual meeting. The weekly teasers reveal that lingering questions about Heather continue weighing heavily on her mind, suggesting that her instincts are telling her something important remains hidden beneath the surface. Curiosity slowly transforms into suspicion as she begins wondering whether everything Joey told her was actually true. If she finally gathers the courage to confront him with those unanswered questions, an entirely new challenge emerges. Will Joey choose honesty and reveal the full truth, or will he carefully protect whatever secrets still remain hidden? With Hayley's lies beginning to unravel, Danny and Bill's emotional history reigniting, Deanna standing on the edge of another devastating public breakdown, and Vanessa chasing answers that refuse to come easily, Friday's episode promises to deliver an emotionally charged chapter where every conversation carries enormous consequences, every secret inches closer to exposure, and every character finds themselves standing at a crossroads that could change everything. The tension only continues to build as every storyline moves toward a collision that feels increasingly inevitable. What makes this chapter so compelling isn't simply that secrets exist, it's that those secrets are beginning to overlap in dangerous ways, drawing unsuspecting people into conflicts they never imagined they would face. Hayley believes she still controls the narrative, but control has a way of slipping away the moment too many people begin asking the same questions. Every lie she has told was carefully crafted to survive on its own, yet lies rarely survive when placed side by side. As the Dupree cousins continue comparing memories, conversations, and suspicious details, the truth begins taking shape without Hayley even realizing it. The walls she built around herself are no longer protecting her. They are quietly closing in, threatening to trap her inside the very deception she created. For so long, Hayley mastered the art of telling everyone exactly what they wanted to hear. She instinctively adjusted her stories depending on who stood in front of her, presenting herself as innocent to one person, misunderstood to another, and completely justified to someone else. It was an impressive performance, one that demanded confidence, quick thinking, and absolute faith that no one would ever compare experiences. Unfortunately for her, the Dupree family is discovering the power of unity. Every shared conversation strips away another layer of Hayley's carefully polished image, exposing contradictions that become harder to excuse with each passing moment. What once seemed like isolated misunderstandings are beginning to form a consistent pattern, and patterns are impossible to ignore once they reveal themselves. The family is no longer searching for random answers, they are searching for the complete truth. Among those piecing everything together, Smitty and Jacob find themselves growing increasingly unsettled. They aren't rushing to conclusions or allowing emotion alone to guide their judgment. Instead, they are carefully examining every inconsistency, replaying previous conversations in their minds, and noticing details that once seemed insignificant. It becomes painfully obvious that Hayley has been adapting her version of events to fit whoever happened to be listening. One explanation quietly contradicts another, and each inconsistency chips away at whatever credibility she still has left. Even people who once defended her begin wondering whether they were manipulated from the very beginning. That quiet shift in perspective may ultimately prove far more devastating to Hayley than any direct accusation ever could. Meanwhile, Lynette Wise unknowingly finds herself standing in the center of the storm. Her complicated relationship with Hayley has always balanced somewhere between friendship and rivalry, creating an unpredictable dynamic neither woman has ever fully understood. Because she has spent so much time around Hayley, Lynette has witnessed both the charm that attracts people and the calculating instincts hidden beneath the surface. She recognizes the subtle changes in Hayley's behavior that others might overlook, making her observations especially valuable now that suspicions are growing. Without even intending to become a key player, Lynette may possess exactly the missing pieces the Duprees need to complete the puzzle. Sometimes it isn't a sworn enemy who exposes the truth, it is someone close enough to notice when the mask begins to slip. As these discoveries unfold, concern for Bill continues growing stronger. The Duprees are no longer debating whether Hayley is simply making poor decisions or struggling with complicated emotions. Their fears have evolved into something much darker. Every new inconsistency reinforces the unsettling possibility that Bill isn't merely caught in a difficult relationship. He may be trapped in one that's actively dangerous. Watching someone they care about remain blind to obvious warning signs becomes increasingly frustrating, especially when they believe time may be running out. There is an overwhelming sense that Bill is standing dangerously close to a cliff without realizing how fragile the ground beneath his feet has become. The family's determination to protect him only intensifies as the evidence against Hayley continues mounting. At the same time, Bill finds himself surrounded by emotional conflicts coming from every direction. His already fragile relationship with Hayley is under enormous strain, particularly as disagreements involving his daughters become impossible to avoid. Family has always represented Bill's greatest strength, but it has also become his greatest vulnerability. Every argument surrounding his children forces him to make impossible choices between loyalty, responsibility, and the complicated emotions tied to the people he loves. The pressure continues building with no clear escape, leaving him emotionally exhausted before another confrontation even begins. Every conversation now feels like a battle where someone inevitably walks away wounded. That emotional exhaustion only deepens when Danny enters the picture once again. Their history stretches far beyond simple disagreements or lingering resentment. Together, they carry years of shared memories, painful mistakes, and emotions that neither has ever fully resolved. When Danny decides to confront Bill, she doesn't arrive looking for a meaningless argument. She comes determined to force difficult truths into the open. She has never been the type to remain silent when she believes something important is at stake, and Bill understands better than anyone that avoiding the conversation simply isn't an option. Every glance between them carries the weight of everything they've experienced together, making even moments of silence feel emotionally overwhelming. If their confrontation truly revolves around Bill's daughters, then neither of them will be able to hide behind polite conversation for very long. Children have always represented the emotional center of their complicated lives, and any disagreement involving family immediately raises the stakes. Danny's fierce protective instincts naturally clash with Bill's desire to maintain balance, creating the perfect environment for another emotionally explosive encounter. Neither wants to cause additional pain, yet neither is willing to compromise on matters involving the people they love most. That emotional collision has the potential to reopen wounds both have spent years trying to heal. In many ways, their confrontation becomes less about winning an argument and more about confronting everything they've been unable to let go. And hovering quietly over every interaction is the memory of that unforgettable elevator night. It has become the invisible presence accompanying every conversation they share, impossible to ignore no matter how hard either of them tries. Whether they approach each other with anger, regret, or reluctant understanding, the elevator remains a symbol of emotions that never truly disappeared. It serves as a constant reminder that some moments permanently alter relationships, leaving behind consequences that echo long after the event itself has ended. That shared memory refuses to stay buried because neither Bill nor Danny has completely made peace with what happened between them. As a result, every reunion carries emotional undercurrents that neither words nor silence can fully erase. Elsewhere, Deanna's fragile confidence continues facing its greatest test yet. After finally allowing herself to embrace happiness through her growing connection with Noah, she had started believing that her life was moving towards something brighter. Noah offered understanding instead of judgment, giving her a rare opportunity to feel accepted despite everything she'd been experiencing. Being welcomed into the Dupree family gathering only strengthened that hope, surrounding her with warmth and a genuine sense of belonging. For the first time in a long while, she could imagine a future where painful memories no longer defined her. Unfortunately, just as hope begins taking root, circumstances once again threaten to pull it away. Joey's manipulation couldn't come at a worst possible moment. Fully aware of Deanna's emotional vulnerabilities, he deliberately pushes her toward another breaking point, using her pain as a convenient distraction while Randy's secret teeters on the edge of exposure. His calculated actions reveal someone willing to exploit another person's deepest insecurities for his own advantage. Every carefully chosen remark chips away at Deanna's emotional control, forcing her to relive feelings she has fought desperately to overcome. The pressure builds with agonizing intensity, leaving viewers wondering whether she can resist falling into the trap laid before her. If she loses control again, the consequences could reach far beyond simple embarrassment. The cruelest part of Joey's scheme lies in its timing. Only recently, Deanna had trusted Noah enough to reveal the painful truth about her emotional collapse during the free clinic ceremony honoring her father. Sharing that memory required tremendous courage because it forced her to revisit one of the most humiliating moments of her life. She admitted how deeply ashamed she still felt after breaking down in front of so many people, and how difficult it had been rebuilding her confidence afterward. Noah listened with compassion, offering the kind of support she desperately needed. Now, just when she seems ready to leave that painful chapter behind, fate threatens to place her in another situation where all those old wounds could be reopened in front of everyone once again. As if those emotional battles weren't enough, Vanessa continues wrestling with a mystery that refuses to leave her thoughts. Her brief encounter with Heather lasted only a short time, yet every detail continues replaying in her mind with remarkable clarity. There was something undeniably strange about Heather's behavior, something that didn't match the simple explanation Joey provided afterward. Heather's decision to decline dinner before supposedly leaving for London felt abrupt, almost rehearsed, leaving Vanessa with an uncomfortable feeling she cannot explain. The more she reflects on that unusual meeting, the stronger her instincts become that an important piece of the story is still missing. Sometimes unanswered questions become louder than the answers themselves. Those lingering doubts are slowly pushing Vanessa toward an unavoidable conversation with Joey. She knows that asking direct questions could fundamentally change their relationship, especially if his responses fail to satisfy her growing suspicions. The teaser suggests those unanswered questions aren't going away anytime soon, meaning Vanessa may soon reach the point where silence is no longer an option. If she confronts Joey, everything will depend on one critical decision, whether he chooses complete honesty or continues protecting whatever secrets remain hidden beneath the surface. In a world already overflowing with deception, half-truths, and emotional manipulation, even a single honest conversation has the power to change everything. And as every storyline races toward its next dramatic turning point, one thing becomes unmistakably clear. Every hidden truth is inching closer to the light, and once those secrets are finally exposed, none of these lives will ever be the same again.